Welcome back, and well, altcoins are set for one last big rally, but just a few will benefit, according to one Real Vision analyst who apparently watches the Cryptoviser podcast, because we have been talking about this for the last 2 months since I came back onto this channel, that in my view, based on the network activity, based on the price activity, and based on all of the speculative moves into the market, it is my opinion, my analysis, and my view that now that we are in April, we are in Q2 of 2025, we are at the 1-year anniversary of the Bitcoin halving from 2024. And from the 12-month to 18-month time frame after the halving, typically based on previous cycles, what we have seen is the most aggressive moves to the upside in the markets from that 12 to 18-month period, which we are now in. And so in my view, I agree with this headline, but we need to dig a little bit deeper to understand why this is, how long this rally is going to last, when we're going into the bear market, and most importantly, what our exit strategies are. That way we can exit this market in profits in the bull market and be ready for the bear market whenever that does come, whenever the major price correction does happen. So let's get into it. Don't forget to give this video a free thumbs up. Also hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss a new video. If you want to help support the channel financially, click the join button down below or leave a super chat in the comments section. So let's get right into it. So we've been talking about this for a while now, right? My view is that the market is already looking ahead. The market is already pricing things in, right? That's why you hear buy the rumor, sell the news. You buy the rumor because that's when the market is pricing things in. So if you hear, for instance, we're going to get a Solana ETF, we're going to get a Cardano ETF, we're going to get a Dogecoin ETF, and you are bullish on that, you should be buying before the approval occurs. That's the rumor. The news is when they come out and say, we have approved the Dogecoin or Solana or Cardano ETF. Yeah, the price may go higher very short term, but then the price is going to start dipping because it's already been priced in. And so the traders, the speculators in the market, their speculative trade is complete. So what do? They exit that and they move into other assets. Anyway, so let's understand a little bit more about this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be exploring some other aspects of this final rally. What the CEOs are doing, what companies are doing, what the speculation is already that is getting priced in, and much more. So let's get into it. So according to Real Vision chief crypto analyst, he told Raoul Pal in a live stream, I think there may be one more breadth thrust from altcoins. The question is it a sustained rally that we will see for 6 to 12 months? He said, at this stage, I am not too sure, but I do believe that quality altcoins where activity returns, activity drives prices, we will definitely see a recovery in some of the more high quality names. And I agree with this, right? Because I personally don't think that the market's over. And some of this we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the video, but we know the administration is very bullish. We know the current financial environment globally is very bullish for crypto. We know that they're more open to crypto. They're looking at regulations. They're going to have stable coin regulations, maybe, hopefully soon. They've been saying that for years already. But you guys kind of get the point. We are at the most bullish point that we've ever been at. But the market is pricing these things in. So if they do create a Bitcoin strategic reserve, it's already priced in. The price is going to drop after, right? We're seeing all this stuff about Ripple, right? Ripple's going to get their own ETF. Well, or XRP is going to get their own ETF. Well, who are they going to be buying the XRP from? Ripple. So it's not really going to push the price up at all. But in these other markets, like there are, but let's not get it twisted. Retail still believes that an XRP ETF is going to be the most bullish thing ever happening for XRP price. And I personally don't agree with that. But again, this is where speculative moves in the market, if they do approve an ETF, boom, XRP can go up, by 200-300% very easily, just on people going in and buying, thinking that that's where Wall Street's going to get all their coins from. In the medium term, the price is going to come right back down to fundamentals. This is what we've been talking about Solana. Solana is the best performing crypto in this cycle, better than Bitcoin. but there's the fundamentals, right? It went from $260. Now we're more than 50% down. Why? Because there's all they have built on blockchain was meme coins, right? Or at least that's the only thing they presented to the world. That's a problem. And so we are seeing Solana kind of readjust and pivot a little bit. But this goes back to the where we are in the cycle, 12 months since the Bitcoin halving. And the 12 to 18 month is when we see the most moves to the upside. So Ethereum holds a majority share of TVL and DeFi. I don't necessarily think that DeFi matters in terms of the context of where we are in the cycle. The trader said that we should watch where network activity is gravitating and use that as the North Star for how to trade in crypto, adding he sees that altcoin markets upswing in the next 2 months. He said, quote, I'm expecting by June of 2025 to see altcoins really start to pick up again, predicated on the fact that Bitcoin is back at all-time highs by that point. Now, we'll see if that actually does occur or not. But here's the deal, guys. I do agree with what he's saying. He's saying watch where the network activity is gravitating and use this as the North Star. Use this as your guide. People are on X are still saying buy Solana, buy XRP. And I'm like, once everybody's saying that, it's too freaking late, right? Like we're at the top for XRP. We're at the top for Solana, multi-year highs. Maybe it's not the top for the cycle, but it's the top so far. And, we have a lot of other assets, Ethereum, for instance, that people are like, no, Cryptoviser, nobody likes Ethereum. Ethereum is shit. Nobody's going to buy it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is the most usage, the most DeFi, the most institutional backing, the most staking in terms of dollars, right? All of these metrics show that Ethereum fundamentals are there. And so why is Ethereum underperforming Solana from a percentage basis this cycle? So yeah, I do agree. We're going to see a move. All the money that has left Solana, right? Half of this valuation, another $60 billion has exited Solana over the last few months. The money just doesn't just disappear, guys. When you see this go from $120 billion to $60 billion, the $60 billion didn't just disappear. It didn't just, like poof, vanish. No, guys, that valuation moved. It moved. Where did it move? Well, we know that it moved into stable coins because we've seen both stablecoin, Tether, and USDC increase, their market caps increase over the last few months. We also know that the coins are going into other ecosystems. We know this. The price may not reflect it, but we know the big money is moving their money from Solana into Ethereum. Because the big money is not tied to their bags. They're like, yeah, all these retail DA traders, all they're doing is holding the price up so we can sell right into them. And then we're going to go buy Ethereum at these depressed low prices. And when the market shifts and Ethereum starts to pump, all these Solana DAs are going to sell and move into Ethereum. And then guess who they're going to be buying it from? The same traders that sold them Solana at all-time highs. They're going to be doing the same thing with Ethereum. And then they just do that rinse and repeat. Then they go into the next coin. Maybe they'll go back to Solana. Maybe they'll go to Dogecoin. Well, who knows? But you really need to assess what your exit strategy is. Because even if we're not maybe there's going to be 2 more pumps in this cycle. Maybe even 3 more pumps, right? It doesn't matter. You have to be ahead of the curve, ahead of the game. And so to be ahead of the game, you have to have a strategy. What is your strategy? Right? Maybe we're going to go up forever, right? Even as Real Vision says, maybe we'll have a sustained rally and we're going to keep going higher. But what if we don't? You can be on both sides. You can be in the market and out of the market at the same time. But you have to have a strategy. And so this brings us to the next point. And that is that Arthur Hayes loves tariffs, and he believes that printed money pain is good for Bitcoin. And effectively, a lot of people believe that all of this tariff fear and fear of what's going to be happening from the tariff situation is really a lot of the negative sentiment in the market, which it could be. It definitely could be. But in my view, this storm is going to pass, right? Whether the tariffs just become the norm or whether the tariffs are reversed because other countries make changes as well. One of those two is going to happen. and the storm is going to pass. And when this storm passes, I personally think that we're going to see tariffs dropped, uh, and reciprocal tariffs dropped personally at some point in the future. That will be so bullish for the market. I mean, immediate reversal. Because a lot of the drawdown that we're seeing in the macro markets, stocks are down 4% every single day this week so far. And so that's that's a problem as well. But once this tariff narrative changes, for whatever reasons, the market is going to just pop up. Anyway, Arthur Hayes says that Trump's tariffs may rattle global economy in some ways, but some disruption could be exactly what Bitcoin needs to rally. He said, quote, global imbalances will be corrected and the pain papered over with printed money, which is good for Bitcoin. Some of y'all are running scared, but I love tariffs. And so, yeah, what he's saying is they're going to print money. They are going to print money. I mean, we've already heard from Trump. He said that there's going to be other companies and countries that are going to be investing $6 to $7 trillion in the United States over the course of the next however many years. That is the same thing. Let's be clear, guys. A company or a billionaire coming into the United States and saying, I'm going to, invest 50 billion. And another company says 100 billion. Another one says 600 billion. We get to 3 or 6 or 7 trillion dollars. That means that they're going to be injecting that money into the economy one way or another through salaries, through business purchasing and stuff like that, supplies and all of that. It's going to be pumping that money into the economy. It's effectively the same thing as the Federal Reserve printing money. And so if they do that and the Federal Reserve prints money, which I think they're going to do at some point, that's a double whammy. That's trillions of dollars coming into the US economy. Now, that's if this actually does happen, the way that they're saying it's going to happen, right? But this could be very bullish. So you have printing money from the Federal Reserve. You have printing money from these companies bringing money in just so they're not getting tariffed, right, and building in the United States. And all this extra money means that probably some of the dollar value is going to come down, which we've already seen happening, and then Bitcoin goes up. But there are other indicators, guys. There are other indicators that we're close to the end of the rally. Or you could say close to the end of the bull run. And one of those things is this. GameStop CEO Cohen buys $10 million of GameStop shares following Bitcoin acquisition plans. Earlier in the week, the company GameStop closed on a $1.5 billion capital raise, with the funds mostly used to buy Bitcoin. Now, they haven't made the purchases, at least at the time of making this video, because this is a huge risk. Because what GameStop is doing is the same thing that MicroStrategy is now doing. They're taking out debt to buy Bitcoin, basically as their business strategy. Because if you think about MicroStrategy, yes, they do have a software business. The software business does cash flow. Probably without all of this Bitcoin stuff, they probably would be making money, but on paper, they're not making money. GameStop is in a very similar situation, and I've told you guys about this, and this is really dangerous for investors who are looking at the long term. Let me explain why. Because what GameStop is doing, in my view, is a latch-stitch effort, right? They're not making money. Their stores are closing. Their business model, literally their business model, is flawed and a fail at this point. With online, with able to purchase games like directly from your console. You can trade games online. You can go to Target and buy these games, or Walmart. Like, you don't have to go to a GameStop anymore. And that's their business. That's GameStop's business. They have not really adjusted to the online ecosystem and adjusted their business accordingly over the last 5 to 10 years. And I believe they know this. They know they're in an existential crisis. And so this Bitcoin plan, right? The GameStop CEO buying his own shares, that's not a big deal, right? But it gives me the understanding that he really believes in what they're doing from this Bitcoin strategy, which is nerve-wracking for me because remember, MicroStrategy's Michael Saylor owns Zero MicroStrategy. He's running this whole Bitcoin buying scheme, saying Bitcoin is the best asset ever created. And he does believe this, all the way up to he doesn't even own MicroStrategy. He only owns Bitcoin in his own personal portfolio that we know of. So this CEO is buying his own shares to instill confidence in the market that he believes in what they're doing. And now they just closed a debt deal for $1.5 billion. And they're buying the top of the market. That's the problem, is they're buying the top of the market. None of these companies did this in the bear market. None of these companies did this when Bitcoin was $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000. They're doing this at $80,000. All of them. Marathon Digital, they just took out $2 billion to buy Bitcoin. GameStop is doing it. We're probably going to see other companies do it. They're all buying the top of the market. But the difference between you buying the top of the market and me buying the top of the market and GameStop buying the top of the market is, for you and I, we're doing this for a long-term investment, most likely. We're doing this to protect our retirements, to protect our futures. And it's money that we could afford to lose. What GameStop is doing, they cannot afford to lose this money. They cannot afford a bear market where prices are below $50,000. I mean, guys, nobody's talking about this. Nobody that I have seen who analyzes the financial markets and Bitcoin is talking about this. And this is really scary for me, because when I think to last cycle, when Genesis went down, Voyager, BlockFi, I mean, all of these companies that were all borrowing and lending to each other, we should have known at that point that FTX was also bankrupt. I mean, I kind of had an idea that why was FTX borrowing and lending from all these people, but they were totally fine. Like, I knew there was more to the story. I knew that they probably didn't have all the money that they said they had, because how are all the companies that they're borrowing and lending to going bankrupt, but they're okay? I think they were just the biggest borrower and lender, so it just took longer for essentially the collapse to occur, which you guys saw in at the FTX collapse. But it was all over leverage, guys. It was all over leverage bets in the bull market. I would not be concerned if GameStop was doing this in a bear market. I would not be concerned if MicroStrategy did this in a bear market. But now they're all just buying the top of the market. This is totally anti-investing. This is the opposite investing strategy. And I understand in the long term, Bitcoin hopefully will outpace whatever losses that you have from the debt. But what if it doesn't? And so the issue here is they're doing this with money they cannot afford to lose. And so if they can't afford to lose the money and they do lose the money, guess what? They're going to be forced to liquidate. And if they liquidate, guess what happens? Price goes down. Fear in the market takes over. Because here's the deal. If GameStop, let's just say GameStop buys at $80,000, $90,000, okay? And then a year from now, we're at under 50,000. So they have a 50% loss. They're a publicly traded company, already not making money. Now they're in a 50% loss in their investment, which is debt. They may be forced by their shareholders to sell some of the Bitcoin. And so if they sell some of the Bitcoin, that could cause fear in the markets that all these other companies like MicroStrategy are going to have to sell their Bitcoin, Tesla or SpaceX or whatever other companies may have to sell their Bitcoin. Whether they will or will not sell their Bitcoin or have to, just the fear alone can push everything, crater it. And so this is a risk. And it's not just GameStop. Other companies are probably going to be doing this throughout the year as well, saying, oh, we're going to buy Bitcoin, we're going to buy Bitcoin. Hopefully they're not all taking out debt to buy Bitcoin at the top. But there's a big difference between GameStop buying Bitcoin and you and I buying Bitcoin. I would even say difference between MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin, because they have a much lower dollar cost average. And they have a lot of other coins that they can sell at, $20,000 to still show that they're not in the red. I don't know how GameStop will do this in a bear market. This is the craziest thing that we've seen in years. Bitcoin buying at the top of the market. Anyway, enough of that. Guys, I'm literally like annoyed that I have to talk about this so much, but it's like nobody sees the risk involved there. And that's another reason I think that we have one more major pump, because this is over leverage. This is too much debt and money that people can't afford to lose, throwing it in the market. That's always a bad recipe for disaster. But meanwhile, we have Pantera's CEO dropping a bombshell saying that Bitcoin should be worth $120,000 today. Now, obviously, Dan Moorhead, CEO of Pantera Capital, he is a Bitcoin maxi. He delivered a bold valuation. According to Moorhead, the world's leading crypto should be trading above $120,000, potentially even surpassing $126,000. If the political and regulatory developments were fully reflected in market prices. Basically, he's saying Bitcoin is mispriced and it did not price in the political and regulatory environment. His argument comes at a time when Bitcoin's price is up only 24% following the presidential election. But guys, from the cycle bottom, it's up like 400% in just a few years. He said if a few days before the US presidential election, with a Bitcoin at $69,000, a sorcerer showed you a crystal ball, and in it you knew for a fact pro-crypto candidate wins the presidency, the Red House and Senate, a red house, a Republican House and Senate, 54 anti-crypto members of Congress losing their seats, several presidential executive orders on crypto, including a strategic Bitcoin reserve, a U.S. digital asset stockpile, most major SEC actions against blockchain industry participants dropped, and the president hosting a summit to get input from the industry. All this in 10 weeks. He said, I bet you say Bitcoin would be way up way more than 24%. The way I think of it, the markets have barely moved relative to trend. The 12-year compound annual growth rate of Pantera Bitcoin Fund is 83%. It'd be up almost as much just naturally. Seems to me, he says, that the crypto markets have yet to price in this very positive development. And I would agree with him. And even though I'm agreeing with him, I still think it's going to be the final rally. And why do I think this? Because it's not even priced in yet. And the issue here is, if we're not priced in now, and let's go with the fact that we're not priced in, what ends up happening is you get a correction to the upside. The same way we get a correction to the downside, we can get a correction to the upside. And so if we should be at 120,000 according to him, that would be a $40,000 increase from where we are, which is a 50% increase in the price. But typically when markets correct, they don't just go to that. They'll go much, much higher, right? So we can have a 100% increase, 150% increase. 150% increase would bring us to basically $200,000. Most people would say, Cryptoviser, we're going way higher than $200,000. 150% from where we are, it's a pretty big number. And that's 10x from the bottom of the market, about $15,000 to $18,000 in the bear market. And so it's interesting what he's saying. He's saying that it's not priced in. But guess what that means, guys? That means that people like him are highly likely taking positions, maybe even levered positions in the market, because they believe that the market's going to correct to the upside. And so they're taking those bets. And when the market does correct to the upside, guess what they're going to do? They're going to take their profits. And we're also seeing kind of everything lining up for this final rally, right? Almost identical to what I've been laying out on this channel. And this is why I say, guys, if you're not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss a new video, and give the video a thumbs up if you haven't done so already. Thumbs up or free, crypto is not. So the Ethereum upgrade is coming. In my view, this is going to be the final narrative shift for Ethereum. The final narrative shift. If we think back to 2021, what was the final narrative shift for Ethereum? The final thing that Ethereum did in that cycle to push the price higher. It was the upgrade. It was the staking upgrade. I forgot what it was called. Yeah, I have no recollection of what it was called. It was like a major upgrade at the time where they were going to allow unlocking staking and liquid staking. There was a huge upgrade 2021, and that was it. That was basically it for Ethereum. I mean, the price went up through the end of the year, but there was really nothing else in from the development side or from the announcement side. And so I think that this next upgrade is going to have a slew of other announcements, probably other Ethereum adjacent chains or Ethereum layer 2s will probably run on the back of this kind of upgrade. And it's very in line with the 1 year anniversary of the Bitcoin halving and kind of this 12 to 18 month time frame after the halving when we see the most violent moves to the upside. So we'll see if that actually happens. And we're also seeing this, like the SEC holding meetings with BlackRock and the Crypto Council to discuss crypto ETF rules. And I've discussed this on other videos as well because everybody's anticipating an XRP ETF or a Solana ETF. Well, we got to remember, number one, Solana whales and whales all over the place are selling. So while retail may think that this is bullish and start buying when we hear the announcement of these ETFs getting approved, we have to remember the ETFs are going to be buying, and a lot of retail, a lot of everyday people, are going to be buying as well because they're going to be like, oh, this is so exciting. This is super bullish. But who's selling to them? When you're talking about Solana, it's the Solana whales. Just recently, Solana whales began offloading $200 million of Solana that they've unlocked, right? They already sold $50 million worth. They have another $150 million left. We'll see what happens with that. We also know after the meme coin situation, hundreds of millions of dollars was extracted from the Solana ecosystem. Is that money ever going back in the Solana ecosystem? No, that money is not going back. It's being extracted. Same thing that happened with FTX, right? FTX. All that money that was lost, is it going to come back into the crypto world? Maybe that people have recovered some of their funds now after the bankruptcy proceedings and all of that. But for the most part, you could kind of consider all that money new money at this point. And XRP ETF. Everyone's like Cryptoviser. The XRP price is going to go through the roof. Well, how is that? The XRP that's going to be sold to BlackRock and all the ETF issuers, it's going to be sold to them by Ripple because Ripple is still selling their XRP. Brad Garlinghouse, David Schwartz, the CTO, they both said they're not going to stop selling. And they have 37% of the supply left that they can sell. So these are not bullish things, right? MicroStrategy buying the top of the market, GameStop buying the top of the market, Marathon Digital buying the top of the market. These are not good. And granted, we may not be at the tippy top, but we're still at the top of the market. And so we need to think about exit strategies for the market. What does that mean? That means we have to have numbers in our head. When this crypto hits this number, I'm going to sell. Maybe not 100%, maybe 25%. Then when it hits this number, I'm going to sell another 25%. Then it hits this number, I'm going to sell another 25%. Then it hits this number, I'm going to sell the rest. Because otherwise, you just keep hoping and praying, right? Going back to the Bitcoin scenario, 150% gain would be a $200,000 price. So if Bitcoin goes up to 150,000 or 160,000, you've doubled your money from this point. Would you sell or are we going to keep holding? A lot of people would say, no, it's going to go higher. All right, it goes to $180,000. And you know that 150%, that 200,000 range, that is your target range to sell. 180,000, you don't sell. 190,000, you don't sell. 195,000, you still don't sell. You're like, I'm going to wait till 200,000. We hit 200,000. Now we're at 205,000. And you're like, no, we're going 250. I'm going to wait. And then we go to 210 and you say, no, it's going to hit 250. I know it. Then you hit 220. You still haven't sold any. Then we start dropping 200. Then you're like, no, it's going to go back up to 250. Then it goes to 210 and reinvigorates you. Yep, we're going to 250. Then it drops under 200 and it never comes back. And you still haven't sold. But you still think it's going to hit 250. So you keep holding and holding down to 150, down to 140, down to 100, down to 80. Down to 70, and now you're below where you were when you made that strategy. So you really need to think of what your strategy is going to be, maybe write it down, and when it hits, execute. Because the worst thing is entering a bear market, and many of us have been through this, You enter a bear market and you're like, shit, I didn't take anything out. And now you're stuck. So yeah, you have to have exit strategies and understand that, especially in the final rally, people lose their freaking minds. They literally do. I mean, some of these prices can go way, way higher than where we are, especially in altcoins with not a lot of liquidity. And people keep saying one of these coins could 10x after already 10xing last year. And people will say, no, it's going higher. It's going higher. I'm not going to sell anything. I'm holding this forever. It's have an exit strategy. Know where your numbers are, whether you're going to hold the money, you're going to rotate into another asset. And let me know what you guys are doing down below. I mean, there's a lot of bullish sentiment in the market. There's a lot of bullish things happening. And there's a lot of things that have not been priced in, as Dan Moorhead has said. And in my view, and apparently Real Vision's analysts, one more pump this cycle. And that doesn't mean we're not going to have pumps after that. It just means this is going to be probably the blow off top pump. So do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down below. Don't forget to give the video a free thumbs up. I'll see you when I see you. Invest responsibly. And as always, crypto on.